to begin, I think that we should talk about pain. What do you think? Yeah. So pain is actually way more complicated than we've been led to believe pretty much all our lives, I think. And according to the International Association for the Study of Pain, this is the current definition, although this is always being updated and, believe it or not, always a little controversial. So pain is an unpleasant sensory and emotional experience associated with actual or potential tissue damage, or described in terms of such damage. So that last line is kind of interesting because it indicates the power of language with regard to pain. And then I want to talk a little bit about that top line. So pain is not just about sensory information, it's also about emotions. And we're going to talk a fair bit about that this afternoon. Pain isn't just occurring when you hurt yourself. It actually hurts sometimes when your brain thinks you might hurt yourself. Yeah? So, like I said, most of us were brought up to believe that pain tells us when our tissues have been damaged, right? You hurt yourself, pain signal moves from your body up to your brain, and boom, you've got pain, right? We have also been led to believe that pain is the amount of pain that we have is indicating how much we've been hurt, how much we've been damaged, right? So I want to tell you right at the start that this is kind of an important part of our workshop today. Answering this, is this true or false? So let me just start with a little scenario for you, okay? So imagine that you're at this bus stop, okay? And you're just crossing the street. And when you cross, you accidentally roll your ankle when you go off the curb, okay? And for a minute, you're like, whoa, I'm on the ground. You know, that's probably not good. And then you look up and you see that bus barreling towards you. Okay. Probably everyone around you was like, rah, there's a bus coming towards you. You're laying in the road or whatever. So even though you've just rolled your ankle, you just pop up and you run across the street, right? And maybe you get to work or you get home. And much later, you're like, holy crap, my ankle hurts really bad. How is that possible if pain occurs just because tissues have been damaged? Haven't you had that experience before where you hurt yourself and then it's not so much later where you're like, that you start to feel pain, right? Yeah, yes, exactly. So this is pretty intuitive. We sort of have this already, but maybe we haven't really put two and two together. Well, if damage equals pain, then how is that possible? Okay, so the thing is, the body doesn't feel pain unless the brain decides it's in your best interest for you to feel pain. So, for example, spraining your ankle, rolling your ankle is a big problem, right? I mean, that's not great. It's definitely going to jack stuff up for a while, you know, getting up and down and, you know, up and down stairs and getting to work and walking around the house. But compared to being smushed by a bus, spraining your ankle is a pretty minuscule problem, right? So this is what I mean by priorities. Your nervous system works on a priority basis. And if it is not in your best interest to have pain, you simply will not have pain. So, in other words, we could say that pain isn't just a simple input to the brain, but one of our many protection mechanisms. Pain is a protection mechanism. Did you guys ever hear that story about Ronald Reagan? He got shot. Remember that? What's that? He didn't feel it. Thank you, Anne. He didn't feel it. So multiple people got shot that day. And so, you know, they threw him in the limo and everybody was pretty freaked out about all the other people. That Brady guy, you know, was horribly injured, right? It wasn't until much later when Ronald Reagan started coughing up blood that anyone, including himself, realized that he had actually been shot. But what's kind of ironic about that is that later on, Ronald Reagan said, every time I got shot in the movies, it hurt terribly. So this kind of goes to show that it's a sensory and it's an emotional experience, right? We can have an emotion almost of pain. So pain is not your body's only protection mechanism. Your body is so sophisticated and so incredible at taking care of you. You have many options for protection. So, have a look at these for a second. So weakness, postures and protective postures and muscle tightness. Muscle tightness is one of your body's protection mechanisms, which I find interesting from a yoga perspective, because how many people, if you're a teacher or, if you just have a body, how many times have you thought, this is so tight that it's painful? And then as a teacher, people always say, I need a stretch for this. Can you tell me how to stretch this out? Because it's really painful, right? But it turns out that the tightness and the pain are two sides of the same coin. They're both protection mechanisms, right? So while we think, the tightness caused the pain, it's just as likely, by the way, that the pain caused the tightness. So if you just start wailing and stretching on something that's tight, how might your protective mechanisms react to that? What do you think? Might make it tighter. And that seems to be the case for a lot of people. You have that tight neck and you stretch, and maybe it feels better for a minute and then it just feels tighter. Yes. Or for example, did you ever, I know you have, did you ever bang your toe on something? You're walking by your table and you bang your little toe and you jump up and down and you swear and it hurts really bad. And then you're like, okay, I'm going to stop being a baby. I'm going to get up. I'm just going to walk it off, right? And you go to take a step and your whole leg gives out. Has that ever happened to you? Like your knee is like weak, right? Am I the only one? Elisa was nodding at me. No, that's never happened to you, Weaver? Oh. Okay, well, that happens to me all the time. So your whole leg gives out. And why would that be? So it's your brain going, whoa, 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 cowboy. We don't know how bad the damage is yet. So in order to keep you from damaging yourself more, we're going to weaken your whole leg. So this is an example of how weakness or discoordination is a protection mechanism. An unpleasant sensation, that yucky feeling in your tummy. When something's going on, that's another protection mechanism. It's your body's intuitive, predictive sense letting you know that something isn't quite right and you need to be on guard. Holding your breath. So here's something interesting to think about too. When you think you've hurt yourself, like when you banged your finger in the door, right? What's the first thing you do after you think you've damaged yourself? What's the first thing you do? You look at it. It's like we planned it, Anne. Yes. You look at it. Yeah, you want to see how bad it is because your body is not so great at telling you just from sensations if you've been damaged. You need actually all of your senses to determine if you've hurt yourself. And a really powerful one, very linked to pain, is your visual cortex, is your eyes, which are essentially your brain outside of your head. Yeah, so the fact is, our tissues don't send pain signals. And they certainly don't send accurate signals as to what has occurred in the body. Our tissues send a danger signal. And then all of our senses mount to interpret those inconclusive signals by combining them with other data coming in from the eyes, the ears, the skin, to determine if there's actual or potential danger. But it's even more interesting than that, okay? So, all species, pretty much any, even a single-celled organism, has the capacity to avoid even the simplest sort of danger, like something too hot or too cold, right? All living things have the capacity to avoid discomfort, but only humans can leverage thoughts and memories and our predictions about the future. We are unique in our ability to do that. So humans are kind of lucky in that we are way better at protecting ourselves than other, even the simplest organisms, right? We have evolved to have a much richer and more vibrant and embodied spirit experience of pain so that we can learn to protect ourselves and also others, not just from actual threat, but potential threat. So all of this imbues us with the capacity to avoid dangerous situations and to protect the people around us. And these protection mechanisms are powerful and they're long lasting, like think a lifetime, and they're mostly happening beyond our awareness. So the fact is, the body has no anatomical structures which are capable of independently producing pain. You don't have a pain nerve in your body. There are no anatomical structures in the body which are capable of independently producing pain. Just kind of let that wash over you for a minute, because it's kind of important for what we're going to talk about. Humans are way too complex for that. We are way too complex for that. And therefore, pain is way more complex than that. So one easy way to help you kind of switch your thinking, if only for the next few hours of our talk, is to remember that pain is not an input from the body to the brain. Pain is an output from the brain to the body. And this output can occur as a result of real or potential damage. This output can occur as a result of real or potential damage, as an unpleasant sensory and emotional experience, or described in terms of such. Okay, so this question comes up a lot when I talk about this stuff with people, but what about actual tissue damage? Okay, what about things like a bulging disc or a herniated disc or osteoarthritis in your knee or your finger or your spine? What about those, the trigger points, right? The muscle knots. What about that tight neck? Those hurt, right? Those have to hurt. It's funny because people nodded like, yeah, okay. And then, it comes to talk about their osteoarthritis in their knee and they're like, oh, but that has to hurt. No, this applies to everything actually. So remember Ronald Reagan? We see that even acute trauma doesn't always cause pain. So why should damage that can't be resolved, right? Because a lot of us are walking, all of us, by the way, are walking around with tissue damage that literally cannot be resolved. I myself have a issue that can't be resolved. It will never be corrected. But that doesn't mean I have to live in pain. And some students, when I talk about this, they say, well, my scans show that I have a BC. And I can't feel better until that gets fixed. And that's why yoga won't help me, because you can't fix my bulging disc. But then other students go, oh my gosh, this is amazing because I have had every scan under the sun. Right, Nikki? Yeah, I have had every scan under the sun and none of them show damage. And they're like, hallelujah, this explains everything. How can those two things happen? How can those two things be true? They can't. We have to update our understanding of pain. And I know this is confusing, right? Because all of us, including myself, was brought up to believe that pain equals damage, and the amount of pain indicates how much damage. I know. But, you know, like you actually, a paper cut, right? Do you ever have a paper cut? It hurts like hell. It is so ridiculously painful, isn't it? Yeah, but it's a tiny amount of damage. Or think of an ice cream headache. You know, you eat your ice cream too fast and then you get the most painful experience in your, like it feels like your head is being split in two, right? So painful. And yet none of us actually think that we have damaged our head, right? None of us think that our head is actually splitting in two when we have an ice cream headache, okay? Yeah. So in both of these cases, but especially the ice cream headache, the roof of your mouth is awfully close to the most important thing you have, which is your brain. And if there is a slight temperature dip in the roof of your mouth, then your body starts to leverage your formidable protection response to keep you from, you know, changing the temperature anymore, because that wouldn't be good for you. Like your brain is really needing to keep a fairly consistent temperature throughout, you know. It's a protection mechanism. So while tissues do matter, okay, having damage in your tissues does predispose you to pain. They alone cannot cause or perpetuate pain. Only your brain can do that. So I think in yoga, like we have a precedent for this, which is the koshas, right? Many of you have recently learned about the Kaushik model, which recognizes that we are not just a physical body or a mind, but we're the combination of many bodies, of many layers. So the physical is just the one, you know, that we think about the most because we can see it and touch it. But we also have a body composed of energy, composed of thinking or thought. We have a body which is composed of wisdom or intuition. And then finally, we have a body which is composed of bliss. So the Kaushik model is sort of the foundation of yoga, right? And we understand what? Mind, body, spirit, right? And if we make a shift on any one of those levels, that we make a shift on all of these levels. Like we all pretty much agree on this. And when we come to a yoga class, we've already bought into that. And yet when it comes to pain, we think, oh, it's just a physical thing. So we just kind of need to make our understanding of all of these cohesive, bring it all together. So what we would say in like the broader world of pain science is that this is a biopsychosocial model. We recognize that pain occurs as a result of biological factors, psychological factors, and social factors. And by the way, biological doesn't mean just the tissues, like, you know, if you sprain your wrist, it also talks about your nervous system. Your nervous system is biological tissues as well. So this model recognizes that pain is incredibly complex and it can exist with or without biological cause. Other factors are just as important, such as the nervous systems, the hormonal system, the immune system, our thoughts, beliefs, feelings, and social context.